Amen. If we go to Adventist Home, page 127, paragraph 2, first sentence says, the lower passions have their seat in the body and work through it. So we were just picking up that idea that here's a body and it says the lower passions. So we've got this idea of lower passions and higher powers taken from Adventist Home 127. We've already discussed that. And there was some discussion, so I'm just looking for somebody, about whether or not this was a physical thing or whether it wasn't. And I think we came to a conclusion that it wasn't. It's to do with feelings. And how do we know that lower passions are to do with feelings and not physical? What did we say about that? Definition of the definition of the word passions, we checked in the dictionary, and it's essentially feelings. So we know it's non-physical.
There's a difference between feelings and emotions.
It had emotions tucked into that. But the point I'm going to make is not so much that it's feelings or emotions, but that it's not physical.
Can I read you what the 1920 dictionary says?
Go ahead.
It says the impression or effect of an external agent upon a body.
That's a passion.
Yes.
The effect?
The impression or effect of an external agent upon a body.
And what does that do? That external effect upon the body, what does it do?
Well, the way you respond back is the way you feel.
So it creates an emotion or a feeling.
Cause, effect. The effect is the feeling, the cause is the emotion. No. I don't know how to say it.
Well, you're going to say the cause is the external thing.
The way your body interprets it.
Yeah, so you put your hand in a fire, so the fire would be the cause, and the emotional feeling is pain. Yeah. So we just identified that passions are to do with feelings, not physical. And the reason why that's important is because if the higher and lower powers are to do with the threefold nature of man, it begins to address this issue, whether this is physical or not. So that's one point. And we're saying that these lower passions have their seat in the body. So here's the body, and someone said that a seat, they inferred that it was a control center. So we went to Revelation 13:2. Why did we go to Revelation 13:2? Because it uses the word seat. So we picked up the word seat, and then we're just diverting for a moment because we just want to try and see if we can understand the verse. As much as possible, I want to try and go during class time to encourage us to read Spirit Prophecy quotes or read Bible verses to just see how we read, even though they may not be pertinent to the flow of thought or the discussion that we're having. So we're halfway through this, and I neglected to put the GC quote. Does anybody have it? Save me finding it.
438 paragraph.
Great Controversy 4:38 paragraph 2. 1 and 2. Was it 1, 2 and 3? Did we have to go to 3?
We went to 2 first and then
I thought we went to 3 as well because we needed 3 as well. So it says, the dragon gave him, we're only looking at the last part of the verse after the colon. It says, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. So it says, the dragon gives him his power, his seat and authority. So I asked the question, who is the dragon? And where is this dragon found? We see that the dragon was found in Revelation 12. And then we said, who is this dragon power? In the Bible it says it's Satan, we know that. But we know it's slightly more complicated because you run through the narrative of chapter 12, it transitions from a dragon to what? A serpent? Yeah? So it kind of runs these two thoughts seamlessly through Revelation 12, and then it introduces the 1260. So it's not that straightforward just to make it Satan, if you just read the verses. At least I don't think. So Ellen White's going to make this clear for us. She makes it relatively simple. And it's in paragraph 2, I think she says. Is that correct? Yeah? That she says, in its primary sense, it's Satan, but in a secondary sense, we can consider it to be pagan Rome. And why does she say that we can consider it to be pagan Rome? She says something along the lines, because pagan Rome was the chief agent. I don't know if she actually uses that phrase. Yeah? It was the chief agent to do his work. And then once you realise that, you can go back into the verses and you can begin to see the historical narrative brought to view there. That the dragon tries to kill the baby that was born of the woman. So this is Jesus. This is whom? Who tries to do that work? Herod. And then Pontius Pilate finishes the work. So we can see all of that. So I think, are we okay with that? It's the dragon power, is pagan Rome. Then it says gives him. I asked the question, who is the him? And I was told it's the papacy. Do we agree with that? But the him is in the symbology. Who's the him? It's the beast of verse 1. We all okay with that? Sometimes you call it the sea beast to make distinctions of the earth beast. Yes? Which verse is the earth beast in without looking? Yeah? Everybody know that? Revelation 13. Yeah, so it's introduced in verse 11. So then I asked, then the verse says, his power, his seat and authority. And I asked the question, I think it was Brother Luke I asked yesterday, who the his is when it says his power, his seat, and then we'll deal with authority in a moment. So you've had 24 hours to think about it. Who's the his? Put your hands up before I ask somebody. Brother? So you agree it's the papacy? Sister Sarah?
I would say pagan Rome.
Yep.
So some people are saying papacy and some people are saying pagan Rome. So let's have a re-look at it.
Well, I have papal written down in my Bible, but we're saying it's the papacy.
Papal, papacy, same thing. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
You need to reread it because someone's arguing against you. I mean, all of us need to. Sister Shamila? So you're saying the his is the papacy, yeah?
Yes.
So let me ask Sister Shamila. Let's read this verse and I'm going to put the papacy in there. Verse 2. And pagan Rome, the dragon, yeah? And pagan Rome gave the papacy's power. Brother Larry?
Yeah, I mean,
It's the dragon's power.
I have pagan Rome as a dragon and gave him,
Gave the papacy
gave the papacy.
the papacy's power.
Yeah, it doesn't sound.
Brother Luke?
Read it and insert my thoughts in there.
Sorry?
Can I read the verse and insert my thoughts in there of what everything is?
Okay, before you give the symbol of, are you going to tell us what the symbol of power is? When you say you're going to insert your thoughts.
Yeah.
Before you do that, just insert those two thoughts. Pagan Roman
For power
papacy and
seed.
explain that first.
For
Before,
power and seed.
no, not the power and the seat, who the pronouns are, the him and the his. Insert that thought first and make that work before you tell us what the power is.
The him is the papacy and his is pagan Rome. Correct.
So you've swapped over? Okay, my sister.
It refers to the dragon.
The dragon?
Conferred the papacy, the dragon's power.
Brother Jonathan?
We know history and prophecy have to agree each other, and I would look at the history.
So let's work with grammar first. Let's work with the grammar first. Because I want us to
but
get the grammar to work.
This would help me to understand the grammar.
Okay, so Brother Larry, why did you have the papacy? Did you just have it in your notes, or did you read it that way?
Yeah, no, I have it in my notes, and that was my research that I've done through this Daniel and Revelation.
Okay, so you went to history
Yep.
to make that the papacy
Correct.
there.
Yeah.
Sister Shimona, how did you do it?
Yeah, I'm looking at verse 1, excuse me, with the 10 horns. And I'm applying the 10 horns to Daniel. I don't know it by memory, but I think it's Daniel 7. And you can say to someone that I'm giving John's ball. So that's how I understood it to be. But
So
I don't
John
know.
had possession of the ball, you took it off of him, and now you're giving it back to him
Yes, so it was his,
to begin with.
not to begin with, but in this context, it was. So it depends on the time period of when it was his ball. It wasn't always his ball, but at this particular time, it is his ball.
Who's the his? The papacy.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the Bible text. But
In-
it's
in Daniel?
Yeah.
Is it set 8, I think? Is it the iron beast with 10 horns?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was. I know it's somewhere in Daniel.
Yeah, I think it's verse 8. Verse 7. Last part of the verse, and it had 10 horns, 7.
Yes.
So how's that helping?
So where was it?
7.
Oh. Because that isn't that describing the papacy?
7.
Uh,
After this I saw in night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, strong exceedingly. You think that's the papacy?
yeah, because it had great iron teeth.
So in
That
the
is
next
pagan
verse,
as well, but-
in the next verse, it says, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up again among them another little horn. So who's the little horn?
Right, okay, yeah, that isn't the papacy.
It isn't.
No.
Okay.
The little horn is the papacy, but not the 10 horns. Yeah.
Okay. Brother Jonathan, you're saying
Yeah.
history and prophecy.
I would look at history to understand this verse, and we know, for example, that Rome, the Roman Empire, its capital was Rome, and we know that the papacy is located in Rome, so that's the seat. And in order that the papacy can have its seat in Rome, the Roman Empire needs to be gone from Rome. So this would be an easy way for me to understand that his is the Roman Empire.
Did that make sense to you, my sister at the back? Yeah? Could you explain what he just said? Because I didn't get that.
That for the seat to be given him, it has to be, pagan Rome has to be,
I can't quite hear you, I'm sorry.
well, I think what he was saying.
Tell us what, because you agreed with him.
Yeah,
Or you just understood it, sorry.
that's what I remember from reading from Daniel and Revelation by Uriah Smith.
Carry on this, sorry, I interrupted you.
That the power and the seat, for him to receive that power from the papal Rome, from the dragon, it would have to be, his kingdom would have to be
He said gone.
gone. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, gone.
Whose kingdom's gone?
The pagan Rome,
Pagan Rome's kingdom.
yeah.
Sister Tanya.
Well, we're told that the dragon, primary Satan, secondary pagan Rome. So, pagan Rome is giving the power, the seat and the authority to papacy, which is represented as a leopard.
Okay, so what I wanted to notice in just this history is that, I think we're all in agreement now, pagan Rome gives to the papacy three things. Do you agree with that? It says it gives him his power, his seat. So can we take the papacy out here, because this is pagan Rome? We're all in agreement with that now.
You know where it says 7 heads, that's what I was supposed to be referring to, not the 10. Yeah, I was looking at the 7, which applies to modern day Rome, and it's built on 7 hills. So I was just looking at the 7, not the 10 I was supposed to. That's why I was thinking it was the papacy, because of the 7 heads.
So let me ask you a question then.
Leopard.
If you go back to Revelation 12, has the dragon got 7 heads?
Sorry, where?
Revelation 12, I didn't give you the verse, but has this dragon got 7 heads?
Yes.
So the sea beast has got 7 heads, and the dragon's got 7 heads. So it's not that straightforward just to say whatever the logic that you were going to have, because the sea beast has got 7 heads, it's going to perhaps help you, because the dragon's got the same structure.
So what about the leopard? That's another thing.
But before you explain that, do you agree that this is pagan Rome?
Yes, I think
If you agree, I didn't
I
want to
agree, but I was
dig
just,
deeper.
There was just some words people may, some people may think to themselves, why are these, because there's a lot of symbolism obviously in Revelation, so it could make you think that it's not always clear which Rome it is, which phase of Rome it is.
I agree with that, so hence I'm
Okay,
asking
so-
you if the his is the phase of pagan, if you can see that in that verse or not.
Yes.
Okay, so
Okay.
you don't have to explain any further,
Yeah.
then I guess that's what I'm saying.
Just proof text for that when we read on in Great Controversy, the 3rd paragraph. She tells us that the seat and the power was held by ancient Rome.
Yes, it actually says it in the Great Controversy.
That I couldn't prove it by grammar.
Why not?
She's German.
I'm German, maybe that's why.
But why not?
For example, we have Larry and we have Jonathan, and Larry gives Jonathan a key, and we just now use pronouns. So he gives him his keys. So whose keys is it? So
Okay, so if you're gonna say that, then you're suggesting that. So this is where Jonathan's his argument is that you have to look at a bit of history. That if someone is going to give Jonathan his keys, and the his could be Jonathan's key, that means Jonathan already had possession of them before. So the grammar does guide you. You may need to. Okay, I'm not going to say that you don't need any kind of history, because the papacy doesn't come before pagan Rome. Is that okay? Brother Theodore.
Just dealing with the English and the grammar, it isn't actually as clear, as we would like it to be, because, if I give him his meal, the meal now belongs to him, even if he never had it before. So somebody could say the papacy now has power, and it was given to him by somebody else, so now it's his power. So I can cheat by looking at the Greek and see that the him is actually an it. So when it says it gives it his power, in Greek they don't agree. That is, the genders don't agree. So we can see that the his power is referring to the dragon, and the one who receives it has to be pagan Rome. So
The one who receives it is
pagan or papal Rome. So pagan Rome is giving it. So it's his pagan Rome's power, the dragon's power.
Is it cheating to look at the Greek?
It's cheating to look at the Greek. Well, because not everybody can do it, so I could cheat.
Is that cheating to look at the Greek?
Well, it's cheating in this class.
Okay, in this class, David. Sister.
That's the same point that I was going to make, that because I was looking at it, that the subject, looking at it grammatically, that the subject of the passage is the papacy. I do admit that I always thought, and yesterday we had that discussion too, and I said, I was always taught that the his is pagan Rome, and that the pagan Rome gives to papal Rome, it's papal Rome, pagan Rome's power. But reading it and thinking about it grammatically, I'm saying that the his could be papal Rome, in that it is showing that papal Rome's power is not his own, but it is given to it.
Okay, but Sister Sarah said paragraph 3 proves that.
39.1, but
Sorry?
it's
Yeah, in
the
there
third
it's clear.
paragraph which you wrote there. It's 439.
Okay.
0.1.
Oh, it's 439.1. So it's,
Yeah.
that's one in that's
1 and 2, and
It's
then
talking about the papacy.
it's like that or not? One, sorry.
What back 3, put back 3, 1 to 3.
Oh, it is going to 1 to. So there's 4 paragraphs.
Yes.
2. Yeah,
Can we be so confused? I need to.
438, 1 to 3, then 439.1. That's what she said. Oh, Peter said we went to 3 and you wrote.
They've got their computers out. You haven't. I'm not trusting you. Okay. So let's just quickly run through this history, if we're okay to do that. Pagan Rome gives to the papacy his power. When does that happen? You've got little cheat sheets on your... Oh, this is bad. 496. Is that what you're saying, my brother? Everybody agree with that? Was that consensus? Anybody disagree?
I thought it was 533 with Justinian's decree.
So, 533. Okay, what does power mean? Strength? You think it means military? So we'll go with, why are we saying 496?
Backed up the papal power with his army.
He was converted.
He was converted. Then 508 is when it really goes in.
What's this say?
538 is the 1260, how that, I'm not finding the right word, but how that correlates to 1798.
That's where you think this power is?
Yes.
Where they begin to get military strength in 538?
That's where the supremacy of the papacy took hold.
Okay, so it takes hold in 538.
Yes.
But if we went to Daniel chapter 12, verse... We did this the other day, I think. We did it in the afternoon class. Verse 11, from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. So it's on the chart. This is 508. Do you agree with that, Sister Elisa?
Yes.
So 508, there's the taking away of the daily. So what is the taking away of the daily, according to your understanding?
Where it symbolizes pagan Rome. Where I'm not sure if my terminology is as good as it needs to be to answer that with full qualification.
Give it your best shot.
Taken away of the daily symbolizes the insertion of pagan Rome into I'm not finding the right words to explain that.
Okay. Sister Brittany?
What does it mean for the daily?
Yeah. What does it mean? What is verse 11 when it says in 508? I'm assuming it's 508 because it says it on the chart. In 508, the daily is taken away. What's going on there? The reason we're asking this question is because our sister said in 538, that's when the papacy is rising to its supremacy. And I'm saying there's some history that precedes that, which is this history.
In 508, the daily, symbolizing pagan Rome, is removed from power. It's no longer a kingdom.
So in 508, pagan Rome is removed from power. Did I say that correctly? Okay. So Brother Clayton, you have a same perspective or no perspective? Brother?
In 508, that's when Clovis gave up his pagan religion or whatever.
So in 508,
If I remember
Clovis
correctly.
gives up his pagan religion, so we don't have 496.
I thought it was 508. Oh, I know 508 is dealing with the taking away of the daily. I could be wrong. I get this stuff mixed up sometimes, but I thought it was 508 in Clovis. Okay. Probably taking away
When you
the
say
daily.
he gives up his pagan religion, you mean he goes from paganism to Catholicism? He changes?
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
Yes, sir.
My brother?
My understanding of this is that the power that the pagan Rome had, they hand it over, they relinquish it, and they give it to the papacy. And so, and that is done, that's how I view it. And Clovis just happened to be the first one who put his military to go behind the papacy and to do that. And then it was the rallying of Clovis with the rest of the pagan powers that actually paved the way by removing the three Arian kingdoms that were standing in the way of the papacy coming to power earlier, that the papacy then came to its complete, able to rule the world in 538. So it's a transition of power. I see the daily being a transition of power going from pagan to papal.
Okay. Brother Jonathan, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say what always comes to my mind is this one chart from Himes. You're at 508, there's a pagan priest offering on the one side, and on the other side there's a Catholic priest offering. So it's basically the same what Bob's saying. There's a transition.
My brother, right?
My understanding of that text is that when it says 508 that the daily was removed, which is paganism, and my understanding of it, that means that paganism was not totally removed, because what happened was a change from Christianity, from paganism to Christianity. So paganism was still there. So I would not say that paganism was totally removed. It was still there in the form of papers.
Okay. Is this something?
Yes, that's the point that I wanted to make, that in 496, Clovis was the first became the first son of the Catholic Church by converting to Christianity. And by 508, they said that all the 10 kingdoms now embraced Christianity. And in Great Controversy, Ellen White says, paganism, instead of being conquered, became the conqueror. It's just that, as Jason said, it was still there, but now it took on the guise of Christianity.
She says that in 508.
Not in 5, I'm not talking about the date.
Okay.
I'm saying she says that paganism, instead of being conquered, became the conqueror.
And you said by that time all the 10?
That's what I've read, that by 508, all the 10 horns were now embracing Christianity.
I thought 3 of them get plucked up.
When do they begin being plucked up? They're plucking up of the 3 does not finish happening until 538, which is why we mark 538.
Yeah, but the 3 of them aren't going to capitulate to the papacy. But you've just inferred that they do.
No, but they were 3 Arians, which were, so it was no factions which began before then. Those 2 factions within this so-called Christian movement.
So they're embracing...
So there was Catholicism and Arianism, but both these things were professing Christianity.
So they're embracing what?
Catholic.
No, the Arians are not Catholics.
I didn't know what you meant by embracing. You said by 508, all 10 have embraced something.
Christianity. They have said they are professing Christianity.
Okay, did someone have their hand up? Well, I find this really strange because we're supposed to be experts on the daily. And I've heard about 6 different views here. It's a bit worrying. Did you have your hand up? Are you just looking worried? Okay.
What I understand to have happened in 508 is the transfer of capitals from Rome to Constantinople.
508 AD. Okay. So I'll tell you my version of the events, which is, I'm worried now because mine might just be one of 10 views, could be all wrong. So without getting into the intricacies of when the battle occurs, in 508 there's a war between the Franks and the Visigoths. And the Visigoths in some way are connected with the Ostrogoths. So without getting into all the intricacies, because I don't know the history well enough off the top of my mind, is that in 508 the Visigoths are subjugated. Essentially, they lose this battle and it begins the demise, the final break-in of the pagan nations or powers. So that's one thing that happens in 508. It's the breaking of the Visigoths. We mark that. Nobody mentioned that, which I was surprised about. So I don't know if we all know that. And then the other thing, and there's good historical information on that. The other thing that is a bit ropey, because I don't think there's any good evidence of this one, although the pioneers do mention it, is that in 508, the last of the 7 horns becomes Catholic. And the last of the 7 horns are the Anglo-Saxons, which is identified as King Arthur, but there's no historical evidence for that, any decent evidence that I've ever seen. So they're the 2 things that people mark. That the taking away of the daily is 508, the last of the pagan horns, the 7, the 7th one, transfers and becomes papal, which is the Anglo-Saxons, King Arthur. But the main one we normally pick on is the Visigoths. So that's why I understand the taking away of the daily to be, that's being marked here. And the reason I mention that is who takes away that daily? It's Clovis that does that work. So it's not just 538 that's been identified. The work of the power is being done by pagan Rome, which is why Brother Larry is saying it's military power. That's one of the things that we get from this military power, 508. So the next question I want to ask, we've said that this is 496, and I think that's a good date to use, for the giving of the military power, but we said it was pagan Rome. But now we're saying this is Clovis, and Clovis is France. So how do we reconcile that? How are you going to get France to be pagan Rome? Brother Jonathan, you said history and prophecy must meet together. So get France to be pagan Rome.
We know that pagan Rome was divided into several parts, and France was one part of it. It's divided into 10 parts, and France is one of it.
Okay, so that's the history.
Yeah.
Sister Shamila, can you do the prophecy? He said prophecy and history must agree. Show us prophetically why France is pagan Rome. Yeah, I'll say pagan Rome.
I didn't say it was, but
No, you didn't say it was. I'm asking you a question. Can you show us
so how
why?
France is pagan Rome.
Yeah, you didn't say it was. Brother Jonathan, history and prophecy must agree. I think we all agree with that. So so he's showing you historically. He says France was part of pagan Rome. So can you show it prophetically, not historically?
Revelation 11.
So you're going to go to Revelation 11.
Verse 8.
You're going to go to Revelation. So before you read it, tell us why you're going to Revelation 11:8. What's that going to prove?
This is talking about the two witnesses in the time period of the treading down of the Gentiles. So it was that period, the 1260, which comes to 1798. And
So verse 8 is going to take us to 1798?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and that's going to prove that France is pagan Rome. That's what I want you to prove. I want you to prove France is pagan Rome prophetically, not historically.
Right.
Are you thinking about that? Are we able, if we didn't know any history, to show, if we heard of France and we heard of pagan Rome, so you have to know some kind of history, I guess. If we didn't know all the historical details, can we prove just from the Bible that France is pagan Rome? Are we able to do that?
Is or is a part
of? A part of, yeah. It's just that we said pagan Rome here, we said pagan, but now we're saying it's France. So I'm saying, I agree that if we can use part of or it's the same thing. Can we do that prophetically without knowing that history? Because your argument was, Brother Jonathan's argument is that the collateral of pagan Rome is Europe, and France was part of Europe, therefore France is part of pagan Rome. It's just a historical fact, that's what you're saying. So I'm saying, can we show that prophetically, biblically, without knowing that information? Okay, so Sister Tanya's saying King of the South. I'm going to say, I don't think that's going to prove it. Because when does he become the King of the South? When does France, different question. When does France become the King of the South? No, not where, when. Who said that? So my sister's saying French Revolution. So she's saying the French Revolution, it talks about a power that comes out of a bottomless pit. Revelation 11, we okay with that? So if it comes out of a bottomless pit, what is the symbology of a beast or a power coming out of a bottomless pit? What does that mean, bottomless pit? If I put bottomless pit, I put BP, what does bottomless pit equal? What is that symbol meaning? Sorry? Hell. No, it's not hell. It's not just that. What did he say? What did who say? He said satanic power. I said it's not just that. No, it's a satanic power is correct, but it's something. There's a key point. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking a different question now about the King of the South. Do we know the Spirit Prophecy quote? Yeah. Paraphrase it then.
New manifestation.
Okay, so what did he miss out? New. A bottomless pit is identifying something that's new. It's a new manifestation of satanic power. How many times has this phrase come up in the scriptures? I already showed you. Yeah. How many times? 3 times. Which are the 3 powers? This one here. The other one is Islam, and the other one is Revelation. Revelation. Not 13. Revelation 17, not someone else, someone else. Revelation 17, what verse? Oh, sorry, I didn't hear? Oh, 11, no, it's not 11, it's verse 8. Revelation 17, verse 8. Oh, it does, sorry, it does, yeah, Revelation 17, 11. Does it say in verse 8 as well?
11 verse 7.
11.
Verse 7.
Oh, sorry, yeah, no. I thought, this was 11. We're in 11.
Oh, you're asking for another one.
Yeah, so there's 3 places. It's Revelation 11, which was this one. Then someone said Islam, which was Revelation 9. And I asked her the third one. And my sister said papacy. I think she said papacy. What did you say? Oh, she just didn't say who it was. Sorry. She said Revelation 17. And then I said, what verse? It's verse 8. So I gave it away. It's this power here, and it's Islam, and it's the papacy. They're the 3 powers that come out of bottomless pits. So when they all come out of a bottomless pit, they're a new manifestation of satanic power. So just coming up to here, I'm only answering Sister Tanya's question. When does France come out of a bottomless pit? Sister Kathy said just a minute ago, she said it was the French Revolution. So it's at the French Revolution that France becomes a new manifestation of satanic power. Because what was it before? Was it a manifestation of satanic power before? Yes. Yeah? And what was that satanic power? What would you call it? France was... What religion was it? Catholic. It was Catholic. So now, at the end of the 1260, it's going to reinvent itself. It's going to be a new manifestation of satanic power. And what's the new manifestation? Atheism. And that's when it becomes the king of the south. It wasn't the king of the south before. It becomes the king of the south when it becomes a new manifestation of satanic power, which is one of the keys that we use in Revelation 11, which was verse 8, I think, that Sister Shamila brought up. It's now Sodom and Egypt, because Egypt is Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, who is God? I'm God. Don't know your God. And we mark that as atheism. And then we're going to use that in Daniel 11, verse 40 and onwards, to identify that the king of the south becomes Russia. Was that too quick? Because I wasn't sure if... Was that okay? If it's too quick, say.
What was the answer to what question?
Tanya's question.
The king of the south.
Oh, okay.
Because she said, Sister Tanya said it's the king of the south.
So it's not the answer.
It's not the answer. So it was just a diversion.
To prove that.
I still want France is pagan Rome. We still need to do that.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go to, we're in Revelation 11. We'll go to verse 13. So someone read 11:13. Oh, no, before we read it, read 11:13 to yourselves, and then tell me if someone can give the answer now. Revelation 11:13. Sister Sarah? No? Sister Kathy?
Part, France was part of the 10th part of the 10.
Okay, so it says in the verse, the 10th part, and the same hour was there a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell. So what are you saying that means?
That France was the first of the 10 to fall.
It doesn't say the first.
Okay, it was one of the 10.
So all that verse is teaching us is that France equals 1/10 of what? Of the city. So my sister, what city is that?
I would suppose Rome.
Rome? Can we go with Babylon?
Yes.
Yeah? Are we okay that it's Babylon? Yeah? At one level, the Bible speaks about warfare between two cities, between Jerusalem and Babylon. Babylon runs all the way through. If you go to the statue, it's Babylon all the way through here, yeah? Do we agree with that? How do we know it's Babylon here at the bottom? How do we know it's Babylon here? If this is Papal Rome down here, how do we know we know that's Babylon. How do we know Babylon's at the bottom? We could say Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end.
Because it continues through and just takes different names.
Could you give us a Bible verse?
Daniel 2.
Daniel 2 is not going to tell you Babylon's down here.
No.
Someone else, please. Brother Luke.
Well, I know it'd be a repeating in large. I'm just trying to think of a verse that would substantiate that.
Sister Shamir?
Question, how can we prove it's at the end, Babylon?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I'm saying Babylon is here, but this is at the end of the world.
God declares the end from the beginning.
Okay, so I
Yes.
said that, so I was just looking for a Bible verse.
Isaiah 46:10.
Isaiah 46:10 is going to show you that Babylon's at the end of the world. No, that's not. That's a proof text to show the principle. I want a proof text to show it. Revelation 17. Revelation 17 verse 5. Is that what you're going to say? What were you going to say?
I was going to say Revelation 14:8. Babylon is fallen, the great city.
Great. So we've got two verses. Revelation 14 verse 8.
Yep.
Babylon has fallen at the end of the world. And it says it's that great city. And Revelation 17 verse 5, talking about the whore, Mystery Babylon. Yeah? So we know we can get Babylon at the end of the world. And it says it's the 10th part of the city. So we're okay with that. Where do we get this 10th symbology from? The clearest place, I think, would be Daniel 7, which is why I asked Sister Shamila for that, because that's where Sister Shamila took us, in Daniel 7. So in Daniel 7, 7:7, you have a beast. This one here. It's got 10 horns. This is pagan Rome. It says it on the chart, pagan Rome. So those 10 horns are the 10, people call them the 10 Germanic tribes or the 10 nations of Europe. One of them is France. So the link that France is pagan Rome is, where are the horns? They're on the head. They're part of the beast. So France is pagan Rome. Yep, can we all agree with that?
Is pagan Rome just France, or it's 1/10 of it, isn't it?
Okay, why does it say a 10th and not a 7th? Because there are only 7. Sorry? Not when it falls. When the earthquake happens, there was only 7. 3 of them had been plucked up. Because you're in this history now. Shows you there's only 7 horns in the papacy. Why does it say a 10th, not a 7th? Why do we think that?
It was a symbol representing the nations of the known world. So at the end of the world, it's showing that it's representing the entire world, the 10.
Okay, because you want to make an end time application, which you're going to go to Revelation 17. Talks about 10 kings, 10 horns. So you want to keep that 10 structurally there.
When we look at 496, when France began to be the military power of the papacy, it was a 10th part.
So when it first began, it was a 10th part.
Yep.
Okay, so that okay, so we want an end time application because there's 10, Revelation 17, and at the beginning it was a tenth. But by the time it falls, it's not a tenth anymore, it's a seventh. And so the only reason, the only thing I wanted to pick up is, I've forgotten what I think you said, it's where it begins. No, I can't remember what you said, so I won't make that point. Brother Theodore.
If I have a pie and I cut it into 10 pieces and I eat 3 of them, and you take one of the pieces after that, you've still taken a tenth, not a seventh.
Okay, so that's what Brother Jonathan has basically
Yeah.
said.
So if you're dealing with what the kingdom is, there's still, each of those kingdoms are still a tenth, even though 3 of those are plucked up, they become part of one of the kingdoms, but they're not evenly distributed.
Okay, so you're just doing the mass of a pie.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what Brother Jonathan said.
I think part of it is what God's trying to do is he's trying to point us back to where it came from. He's pointing us back to that it is part of Babylon, and we know it broke up into 10 parts originally. So it's part of that verse is trying to take us to look back at where it came from, so we know where it came from.
Okay. Is Brother Tyler there? Have you any thoughts?
I think the answers that were given were pretty good in terms of the mathematics of it.
They're all correct. I'm asking, is there anything more?
I think maybe, I never thought about it, but maybe the papacy is taking the place of those 3, filling the void, so to speak, so it still would be 10. I don't know if that's valid.
Okay. Let me do an aside. I said this would happen a lot. Let's go to this board. For quite some time now, we've done (1863) takes you to what date? Does everybody know that? Sister Tanya, how does that work? Sorry? Okay. But Jonathan?
It's 126 years.
So it's 126 years.
And we get the number 126 from the shekels with the 25, 20.
Which book, which chapter, which verse?
I think it's Daniel 5 with the writing on the wall.
Okay, you got Daniel 5, the verse?
I don't know the verse.
My brother, the verse? Anybody know it? Okay, so let's find it then. So we've got Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. 25. So Daniel 5:25. And we're going to get Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin is 126. And then we're going to change it into Gira. We have a verse for that, please. Exodus 13:13.
No,
30.
Yeah, 30:13.
So there are a lot of Bible verses that talk about this. So I'm going to say this is shekel, and this is gira. I don't know how to spell gira. Is that G-E-R-A-H, I think? G-E-R-A-H. Okay, that's what I got. Does everybody understand that, or is that just... Is that new to anybody? Everybody agrees with that? You've all heard of that? Yeah, we're all comfortable with that. Okay, so we're saying this is what? A 25-20? So this is 25-20. So now my brother's saying symbolically. Why are you saying that?
Because it's not 2,520 years. We're not dealing with time prophecies, but we can read into it symbolically that 126 is representing. It's representing a 25-20.
Okay.
I would add it's about the scattering and the gathering of truth.
Scattering and gathering of truth. When's the gathering happening?
1989 and the increase of knowledge.
So that's the scattering. Then you'd have a gathering.
Yep.
Or how would that work? Yeah. Okay, maybe we're not sure. Anyone else? How do we jump from 2520 to 126? What's the logic behind that?
It's half minus.
Sorry, half minus the 0. Okay, so that's what I wanted to hear. I like that. So we're going to do half minus 0. Does everybody understand that? What she just did? So we've got 2520, half equals 1260, and minus the 0. Which is?
110.
Okay, it's 110. So what are we talking about here?
I never thought about that. Wow.
Okay, so that's why I'm bringing this up, because I want us to see, hopefully, that there's a bit more about this 1/10 than just it's a tenth of a slice, or it takes you back to the beginning, because we're not at the beginning here, are we? We're at the what? We're at the end. Yeah? So, any more thoughts on this? Why are you halving it for? Because the maths work. Okay, which is good. So, sorry? Okay, so let's go to this then. Pagan, papal. Which one do you want to go for?
No, you have to go to 723 because it's the first one.
Okay. 723, 538, 1798. Everybody's okay with that? 1260, 1260. Yeah? So we're already bringing this 538, 1798 into this story here. Because we're getting to 496, where I think we're going to say he gets converted. 508 is the taking away of the daily. The taking away of the daily is so that the papacy can be either placed or set up, depending on what verse you're looking at. 1131 or 1211. So it's going to be placed or set up in 538. Does that make sense? So we're connecting these two thoughts together. Sister Brittany, is that too fast or? Yep, okay. So we're halving it and taking zeros off. So what are we doing here to get from this structure to this one? Okay, I'm trying to ask the question without giving. Without giving the answer. I want you to try and think about what we're doing. How do we get from this here to this? So we've got the mass. We've got you half it and take a 0 out. Someone said something? We're comparing the scatterings. Explain that a bit more.
You're comparing the scattering of the first 2520 from 1723 to 1798 to another type of scattering from 1863 to 19.
Okay, so we're all doing that. I agree with that. But I want us to try and see how we jump from here to here. So I agreed that the scattering, William Miller's going to have his dream and the jewels are going to be scattered 7 times. It's the rejection of the 2520. Our church gets the mini tickle your fasting prescribed upon us. We're going to go into darkness. We're going to be scattered until 1989. So we've got the 4 generations. We understand all of that. So I just want to see how we jump from this to this. How are we going to make that leap?
Showing the progressive fall. We're showing the fall of both.
Okay, progressive fall.
What number 4 generation?
If I did this and I began here and I run through history, what history am I running through first? Paganism, and then I'm running after paganism, I'm running into papalism. So first paganism, then papalism. What do we call that? It's running sequentially, yeah? So this is a sequential history. Are we okay with that? Mm-hmm. So normally when we think about the 2520, it's sequential. So is sequential line upon line? Is it? Okay, how many lines have I got here? 3? How many? Who said, some saying 4? Some saying anything? So Sister Tanya says 2 lines. What are the 2 lines?
The history of the scattering of the northern kingdoms and the scattering of the truth of the Adventism.
I don't like using this word, but Damstead uses the word motif. What is the motif? No, someone else. Someone else. Sorry?
Literary theme.
A theme. Could I say a badge? A logo? A motif, yeah? So he says, Sister Sarah?
Just translating it into German.
Oh, what is it in the... Oh, okay, that's fine. I thought you were going to give us a good definition for it. Okay, so Damstead says that the motif or the badge or the banner of the Millerite message was what? Brother Larry? It's connected to all of this, so it's not. I'm not asking you to make this huge leap.
So I was reading.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Brother Jonathan?
Thinking.
So it's connected to this. The punchline in their argument is Daniel 8:13. Yeah? What's Daniel 8:13? Brother Luke? What is their issue? Because that we've rejected today.
Well, we've rejected 2520 church.
Okay, so it's connected to 2520. The reason why we've rejected the 2520 conceptually is because we've rejected the motif or the banner or the punchline of the Millerite message. Brother Jonathan?
Yeah, I think it's the 2 desolating powers.
So it's 2 desolating powers. We no longer believe that. So if you don't believe that, you're always going to come up to a dead end when you go to the 2300-day prophecy. So the motif of the Millerite message was 2 desolating power. It defined their message. Everything hung upon that. So if you're okay with that, then Sister Tanya said it's 2 lines. What are the 2 lines? Paganism and papalism. And when you do a 2520 like this, how is it running? Sequentially. So we've got 2 lines which we're running sequentially. Are we supposed to be doing that at the end of the world? Are we supposed to be running things sequentially? How are we supposed to do it, my sister? Line upon line. So if we did this line upon line, what would we do?
Overlay them.
We'd overlay them. So we'd break them here and we'd overlay them like that, yeah? So let's do that then. So now you've got 2 lines, which is pagan and papal desolation. So we're going to bring this to the end of the world. So how long is our line now? It's not 2520 long. How long is it now? Now it's 1260. So all we need to do is take off the 0. How do you take off zeros? Okay, you have to take 1/10 of it. So now we've got 1/10. So the reason why we're going to get this 126 is not some jiggery pokery. Is that word in American? It's not foolishness. It's not we're just getting the numbers to fit. No disrespect. We're not just doing this, halving it and taking off zeros and things. There's a reason behind this. It's because at the end of the world, we're not supposed to run things sequentially. We're supposed to run things line upon line. And already, in our movement, there's a push to move away from what I think is a valid principle of line upon line, and there's an insistence that we begin to do things sequentially. And why would we say that? Why would we run things sequentially at the end of the world? Because we've always done it when? In the past. So if you've done it always in the past, some people have the idea that you have to do it here at the end of the world. And so can you get this 2520 to work here? Of course you can, because you all did it. You all said, yeah, we just play around with some numbers, and conceptually it all works. Yes? So you can get it to work, and it looks okay, it looks good. But I'm saying if you do it properly, not that you weren't doing it properly, and we do it line upon line, then you begin to get a structure that actually begins to look, I think, more reasonable. So we're at 1260. How do we get to 126? And why do we get to 126? Is it just because the numbers work? We can't just do things because numbers work. We have to have some kind of reason behind it. So this 10th is not just because France was a 10th part of the city and the pi works. There's a bit more than that. It's not. I'm not saying it's some super thing or it's complicated, but it's a bit more than just saying it's because there were 10 at the beginning, there's 10 at the end. Sister Tanya.
Are you breaking it down into fractals when you do that?
I'm not sure if line upon line is fractalization. I don't think it is.
No.
But it may be. I don't know. I don't understand fractals well enough to. I don't know if anybody else agrees. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
When you're zooming in, you have a line, and then you want to zoom in, and you break it down, and you break it down, and you break it down.
Yeah, I could see that, but if I were to do this, if this was Millerite history, and this is our history, and I've put a gap in here, because this is a time of the end and a time of the end. So I've squashed the gap, yeah? Because this is 1798, and this is 1989. Does that make sense? Because 1844 would be here. So there'd be over 100 years gap. But I haven't done that, I've just done that. So if I were to break this sequential history and drop this underneath, would you say that's fractalization?
No.
Okay, so I'm not saying it isn't. I'm saying I don't understand fractals well enough. It seems that it isn't to me, but I wouldn't argue whether it is or it isn't, because I thought fractals were something different. But that's not my point, if it is or it isn't fractals. It may well be, but I didn't think that was fractalizing.
Well, on level, at 9/11 is basically the empowering of the third angel's message. So you do have to put on a line to explain how that happens. And then you take that history of our history and then you put it down another line, and then you zoom in and you show more details on that.
Okay, so I could go into show more details, and that would be fractalizing, but I don't know if I just take one history and drop it underneath, that is necessarily fractals. But I didn't want to have a fight about that or not.
I just see that, we're told in the spirit of prophecy that history repeats. And we're told more specifically that the history of the Millerites is going to repeat in our day. And so it begs the question for us to be able to take those histories and not leave them sequential, but to compare them. You can only compare them by superimposing them over one another or on top of one another, line upon line, so you can evaluate them.
I agree with that. So, if this is correct, what's it teaching from 1863 to 1989 that's happening? Are we being scattered? Yeah? Who's scattering us? If this is correct. You said the Lord. Yeah, obviously the Lord, but he's going to. The Lord has got something in his hand. Sorry? The two desolating powers are not doing it sequentially now. They're doing it concurrently. There's a concurrent desolation that's happening to God's church. That's why we're here. Things speed up. They work twice as fast at the end of the world. Okay, so we'll pick up one more point. 10th. So we'll do it here. What does the 10th equal? It's a symbol. We're used to now using numbers as symbols. Sorry? Tithe. Test. A tenth is the test? Sorry? Oh, a 10 is, no, a 10 is that, but a tenth isn't a 10. So I'll take, if that's what you meant, if you meant 10.
Yeah.
Back in our class in the UK, by now everybody would open their computers up, and what word would they have typed in? And I don't know why no one's done that yet. Or you have, or you're silent. You have? And where is it taking you to?
Oh, in the Bible?
I was on the spirit of prophecy.
Oh, okay. I said, it wasn't a question, it was a statement. I said, back home, by now all the students would have opened their computers up and run the 10th, either through Spirit of Prophecy or through the Bible, and they would have started coming up with answers. Not the answers to the question, but they would have come up with verses that talk about it or started looking.
What are you asking? What does it mean?
10th is a symbol. I want to know, what is it a symbol of? What does 10th mean? Brother Clayton said 10th, it means tithe. We all agree with that. I'm saying, does it mean something else? My sister said it was a test, but I was going to, before I asked her what the proof text was for that was, she said the number 10 was the test. And I'm saying 10 is not a tenth. We found it? Genesis
28, verse 20 to 22.
For God's house.
Sorry?
Two is the one that says
Your
it.
pillar shall be God's house.
Yeah.
And of all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the tenth unto thee.
Okay, so that's tithe.
Tithe.
So that's the tithe proof text. My sister?
This comes up with Genesis 8:5, and it's talking about the 10th month.
I don't think that's what a tenth means in that context. Because that's the number 10 as opposed to 1/10. Sister?
Leviticus 14:21. And if he the poor and cannot get so much, then he shall take a lamb for a trespass offering to be waived, to make an atonement for him, and 1/10 deal of fine flour mingled with oil for a meat offering, and a lot of oil.
Okay.
It's also Exodus 29.
Is it the same concept?
Same concept.
Exodus 29, 40. Any others?
Numbers 29:4.
Is the same
1/10 deal for one lamb.
24:9. Okay? So all of these are 1/10. Sorry? Oh, 29:4. Say it. In our movement for a long time now, there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of arguments about Matthew 13. It's right over here. Since about last year, there's been a lot of discussion about Matthew 13. What's the argument about Matthew 13? Sorry? I didn't hear what you said. No, you said something. Say it just a bit louder. You didn't say something. You're not going to speak? Okay. Can you speak on her behalf? Or?
The argument has been about the wheat and the tares, and that's literally applying to people, or is it a message?
Okay, so there's been a discussion about the wheat and the tares, and I think the discussion is that no one can identify wheat and tares.
Yeah, that's better stated.
Yeah? We can't identify wheat and tares. So, Matthew 13, if you go back to the Old Testament, particularly verses 24 to 30, but the whole chapter generally, what passages does Matthew 13 take you back to? Matthew 13. If you don't know, I don't think you're going to find it that easily. It's three main passages that it's going to take you back to. So, why would it take you back to Genesis 26? Ah. Matthew 13, often, Jesus is going to say something or he's going to do something, he's going to behave in a certain way, and it's going to say it's a fulfillment of something that was in the Old Testament. So Matthew 13 is the fulfillment of Old Testament scriptures, prophecies, stories, depending on how you want to. So I'm just asking us, do we know what those, there's three primary ones, at least to my way of thinking. Sorry?
25, because of the gathering, the how many souls you're going to gather in.
Okay, you're just talking like conceptual. I mean, like a hard. I mean, it's demonstrable. Protestants, anybody, evangelical Christians, they could all do this. They wouldn't have to know any of our theology. It's all straightforward.
Is it just in the Old Testament you need examples from?
I'm not asking for examples. I'm saying what's happening in Matthew 13 is the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy. I'm asking what are the prophecies that are being fulfilled in Matthew 13? It's found in three places, at least. So, okay, if we're not sure, I'll just give you that information. We'll go to the first ones. It's Psalm 49, it's Psalm 78, and the other one is what, Sister Tanya?
Isaiah.
Isaiah, which chapter?
So here and we shall hear and shall not understand.
Do we know? So Isaiah 6. So when you start having a discussion about Matthew 13 and the rights and wrongs of that, you're now going to have a discussion on Isaiah 6. And there's been a big discussion on Isaiah 6 since this, and probably preceding it. And what's the argument or the problem with Isaiah 6, Brother Tyler? Hidden sin. So it's dealing with, does this person, Isaiah, have problems at 9/11 or when? Or midnight? Isn't that the argument? It's about 9/11 or midnight. So it shouldn't be a surprise that we've got a discussion about Matthew 13 as we approach midnight, because it's connected to Isaiah 6. Okay, so that's the clue about the 10th.
I've found a couple pertaining to tithing.
Okay, so I don't want to go to tithing.
Okay.
I want to go to Isaiah 6. Have you picked up the verse? Sorry? Verse 13. So I'm just going to give the answer. So you need to read this, Isaiah 6:13, in your own time. So I'm just going to give you the answer of what the 10th is a symbol of. Unless you can see it now. Sorry? Thank you.
Well, by tithing, I was talking about tithing of the herd or the flock, which I saw as the remnant, I suppose, as well.
So a 10th is a symbol of the remnant. Where do we get this concept of the remnant? We get it many places, but one of the places we get it is in Revelation 12, verse 9. Revelation 12:9. Sorry?
12:10.
So you're saying 12:10? I'm just we're letting her do it. Revelation 12:10.
Sorry, 12:17.
12:17.
Yes.
Okay, and Revelation 12:17 is going to take us to. Okay, we won't go there. So it talks about a remnant. It talks about the dragon being wroth with the remnant. Yes? Who's the remnant? The church. Yes? So it talks about the dragon being wroth with the remnant, and when does it begin to be wroth with the remnant? From 1863 onward. The pagan desolation of our church begins, the wrath begins there. I'm not saying it doesn't carry on afterwards. We can have a line to show that. But this tent is a symbol of the remnant. So when we come to this 1260, who's being persecuted here? Who's persecuted in the 1260? Is it? Isn't it the woman? It's the woman that's persecuted in the 1260. Yeah, the woman's persecuted in the 1260, but at the end of the world, who's going to be persecuted? The remnant of her seed, which is us. And the tent is the remnant. It's a symbol of the remnant. So when you come to the end of the world, you can't use 1260, 1260 years. You have to use a tenth of that. It's a tenth, not the full number, because it's not the woman that's being persecuted, it's the remnant. So we have prophetic license, justification for using this 126, not for using the 2520, or not for using the 1260. It's not just some random plucking up of numbers, like we did here, like we might think. So if someone says to you, why is it 126 and not 1260 or 2520? We have reasons, because we're not doing two things. We're not running sequential histories anymore. We're running line upon line, so which would mean it would be 1,260 years, way in the future. But we don't have 1260s because we're not dealing with the woman, the church. We're dealing with the remnant of the church. And the remnant, by definition, is the tenth. So you have to get that persecution of 1260 and make it a tenth. So when you start doing that, I can't remember, someone said it, it's 2520 symbolically because we don't do time anymore in our message. It seems to me there's a lot of time involved here, and it's calculatable, if that's the right word. Yeah. If you get the symbols correct, it has to have been 126. It's not just some random number that the numbers work. It's all there. If I want to get in trouble, it's all time setting. And if you want to argue that it's not time setting because we did it back here and looking backwards, I'm not even sure if that's a valid argument anymore. So let's have a quick recap. We got off topic, because I want to go back to this issue, but we're off topic and we still didn't even finish this. The lower passions have their seat, it's the control center, in the body. We picked up the word seat from Revelation 13 verse 2. Revelation 13 verse 2, we went there. Pagan Rome gives to the papacy three things. It gives his military power, which is the one we did, 496. But 496 is Clovis, it's not pagan Rome. So I asked, how do we get from France to pagan Rome? You go to Revelation 11 verse 13 that says France was the 10th part of the city, Babylon. So I'm saying, why was it the 10th? And it was the 10th originally, but what is this indicating now? That France is what? It's the remnant. It's the last vestiges of papal supremacy. Because what's happened? There was an earthquake and the remnant of papal supremacy fell. And when it fell, what happened? There was a new manifestation of satanic power. Now it goes from Catholicism to atheism. So we picked up this word tenth, and we just ran through this to see why do we use this word tenth. So I took you to this, which we're all familiar with, 1863, 1989, mini, mini, tickle your farsi. We went to the calculation, and then we just do this. We say we half it and drop a zero, which is all fine. And I'm saying instead of running things sequentially, as we did in the past, at the end of the world we're supposed to run things line upon line. So if we do line upon line, it explains why we're halving it. There's prophetic justification for doing that. So you get to 1260. So how do you get from 1260 to 126? You don't just drop zeros. There's a method behind it. It's to do with this tenth. Because the tenth is a symbol of the remnant. And this history is dealing with the history of the remnant. So you have prophetic justification to go from the 1260 to 126. And all of this is found in Isaiah 6. And Isaiah 6 is connected to Matthew 13. Matthew 13 is what is shaking this movement. At least one of the things that's shaking the movement. So let's close with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness and your watch care over your people. We ask and pray that you would be with us and bless us. Lord, help us to have a clearer understanding of your word, because we know it's through your word that we become sanctified. Help us to honour you through our day, in our thoughts, in our actions and our behaviour. Bless us, Father, not because we deserve a blessing, but because we're your children. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.